Hi, I'm Jerre Dawson, and what we're going to do today is learn the basics of seed starting. This is the basic course. It doesn't go into even perennials. We're just going to do annuals because annuals are little packets of energy that want to produce plants. So they're the easiest thing to start. The first thing you need to do is read your seed packet. The most important information is on your seed packet. It will tell you how far before the first frost date you need to plant it, whether the seeds require bottom heat, whether the seeds need light excluded or not, because some seeds, oddly enough, want no light. Some seeds need to have light in order to germinate. They also need to absorb water. That's one of the main things they need to do. And it will also tell you on the back of your seed packets, if you have something that is going to sulk if you plant it or start it from a seed growing area and then try to replant it. Some of those are my favorite things. That would include sweet peas. As a matter of fact, I have some blue sweet peas, but something like that you need to put into a pot that can go right into the soil because they don't want their roots disturbed. Anything that generates a long tap root is going to be like that. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to read your seed packet, and it's going to say last frost date. Our average last frost date can be found on the internet. This is my little sheet that I keep at home, and the closest I can find is Danbury. So the spring dates that they give, probability level 90% that we'll have our last frost by April 29th. So that means you count back from April 29th and figure out when to plant your seeds so that they'll be ready to go out at that date. Couple of things about that date and about planting seeds out. You can plant your seeds out immediately, your tomato seeds particularly, but tomatoes are going to sulk in the ground. They don't like cold soil. And your peppers don't like it either. Anything that's in the solanum family, like a tomato, is going to sulk. So don't put those out until the soil temperature is actually warmed up. Now, what we're going to do is have some members come to the greenhouse and pick up kits, which will include these trays that are separated for seed and the black trays in which they'll live. And we're going to be sending out soil, actual potting soil with those seeds because we don't want people to have to pot up quickly. But normally you would just use seed soil. Now, this seed starter is the one we use in the greenhouse, and the easiest way to do it is to use it when it's loose like this. Spread it over the top. And I'm just going to do the center of this for time's sake. I don't know. This is our regular Zoom of 40 minutes, or is it a longer one? So anyway, so as I said, annuals are easiest to start indoors. And that's what we're doing here. The way to moisten and to water if you can, and you may want to leave one corner of something like this free so you can pick it up like this, because you do not want to water from the top. You can wash the seed right off the soil, or it's easier to overwater. So the soil or seed starting mix will absorb that water and get just the right amount, but never leave them sitting in water once they have absorbed that amount. So you've read your seed pack, and let's see. You've read your seed pack and you've got some place set up to grow your seeds. Now, the best way to have a place set up to grow your seeds is not to put them just on a sunny windowsill. The sun is not as strong, even into the springtime, as it is in the summer, so you will still get leggy plants. So you want to have growing lights. I can send information out about where to get various growing lights, but this year I was very happy to find out you can use shop lights, but you can buy what's called a T8 bulb that's an LED. And what's nice about that is you can make a really simple setup. Single tray. Oops. And Sterilite box. Then LED bulb, because the LEDs run cold, so they're not going to melt the box. So you've got lights coming right down onto the plant. 16 hours a day is how long you want to keep the lights on, because plants have a day system and a night system. During the day, they take in carbon dioxide. At night, they respire oxygen and moisture. So you don't want to keep the lights on all day, because they can't get that double system going. Now, the next question, you got your seeds all set up here, and I'm going to use dahlia seeds, even though they're not annuals, because it's a larger seed and you might be able to see the seed. I would, if I had a setup ready for these are canna seeds, but they have to be soaked overnight, and I can do that in an intermediate class if people are still interested. So what you're going to do is you're going to say, now how deep do I put this? Again, that's going to depend on the seed pack, but if it doesn't tell you, you want to put them in. So you can see how large these are, which is why I'm using them so you can see them. You want to put them in so that there's at least 2.5 times the width, not the length, but the width of the plant of soil on top of them. So since these are not completely wet yet, I'm just going to put a little hole in here. You can use your finger, you can use a pencil, you can use a dibbler if you have one. You're going to put that in the middle, and you're going to put 2 or 3 seeds in each cell, because you don't know at this point what the viability of the seeds are. Sometimes you'll get a note that's actually on the seed package that says difficult germination, and you might have to wait longer. Some seeds germinate in 4 or 5 days, so they'll pop right up. If you have old seeds and you don't know if they're still viable, take a couple out of the package and put them in a damp paper towel. And if they're viable, they should germinate in that paper towel in a couple of days. When you peel the paper towel back, if you have 5 out of 10 that have germinated, that's a 50% germination rate. So you know you're going to have to put in twice as many as you would normally put in to make sure you get what you want. So that's essentially what you want to do with potting up seeds. Now, I'm going to make a hole. I have to tap the sides a little bit because the soil's very loose. You're going to put these in. You will have to thin them because they'll begin fighting for nutrients, and then just cover it up. If you're a fanatic like me, you have sand at home, and you take sand and you shake it over the top, because what that does is it cuts down on damping off, and it also cuts down on the emergence of fungus gnats, which are not your problem. They're the soil's problem. All soil has fungus gnats, and you're going to see them flying around. They eat dead and decomposing pieces in the soil. They don't eat the plant. So that's how you would plant that. If you have a lot of really tiny seed, you can wet the tip of a pencil and tap it onto that tiny seed and just put it in. Okay, you won't use garden soil, because garden soil is going to have pathogens in it that are going to go after the seeds right away. You can use different pots. You can use peat pots. You can use, hold on a second. You can sprinkle seeds that are small over a tray like this, and then just plant at the top. Again, holes in the bottom. We're watering from the bottom to protect it. So we're going to water from the bottom. Now, the next thing is kind of counterintuitive, because everybody wants to protect their plants. But as soon as you see the first shoots coming up, you want to take that cover off, because otherwise you can develop damping off more easily. You can develop various fungal diseases. So you want to make sure you take that off. That's why we have larger domes, but We don't always use them unless we're using them for cuttings, because you need the height for the cuttings. But with something like this, if you actually have the dome that fits over it, you only need one that's about 2 inches high. So 14 hours, then your seedlings. The soil that we're sending out for the people who are growing for us, as I said, is going to be regular soil that has mycorrhiza and antifungal in it, which will help with the damping off, and will also help because when the second set of leaves come out, which are the true seeds, the first two are called seed leaves, and then the next two look like what they're supposed to look like for that particular plant, and those are true leaves. And that's the point at which you would, if you use a seed starter which has no nutrition in it, you're going to start feeding your plants at half strength once a week. Again, from the bottom, we don't want any water on the top. In order to prevent leggy plants, one thing that's really important, once you take the top off, is to either brush them like this, which sounds silly, but as the plant is stimulated, it develops a sturdier stem. You can also do it with a fan, as long as there's some type of stressor that will cause the plant to grow a more robust stem. Then those of you who are growing for yourself at home, you'll pot them up at some point if they're fast growing. A tomato, they're not gonna last for that long in a division that's just small. They want something bigger. They're going to grow really long roots. So you're going to have to probably pot them up. But with other plants, you won't necessarily have to pot them up before you have to put them out. But if you do, you have to harden them off, which means taking them outside in the morning for a few hours, keeping them out of hot sun and heavy wind, and then bringing them back in at night and increasing the number of hours that you're doing that so they get used to the new situation that they're going to live in. Now, here's something that you're going to want to do for yourself to make sure that if you're going to keep up with seed planting and you're going to go forward with this, you want to mark a stick that you put in so you know what you're growing and when you planted it. And if you have the information, seed packets will sometimes tell you when they're put together. So it'll have a date on it. It's from the 2019 harvest, the 2020 harvest. You also want to put the number of days, like 4 days or 6 days, or if it's 2 weeks, 14 days. Then you don't have to say, oh my God, this isn't working, because you know how long it's supposed to take. Poor germination can be caused by overly wet or cold soil. I did bring in a small heat mat. People who are going to grow for the plant sale at home can borrow heat mats. We do have some that they can use, and the bottom heat is what gets the plant going, and it's more important than the heat of the room, because what you're trying to do is get a nice, strong root system developed, and the heat will help with the root system. Okay, and that's about it when it comes to starting annual seed, because they want to start, and they have everything in the package they need except for water and soil. And of course, the soil at that point, it's almost like hydroponic, because it's just the medium which is holding up the plant and holding the roots. Why grow them from home? Well, because you can control your systems. If you've used organic seed starter, whatever, and you can get a lot of different seeds that you can't find plants that you can't find in the nurseries, because they're not profitable to ship. And one of those would be if you'd like snapdragons, and if you have little kids, they're perfect. The kids can play with them and everything, but again, they have long roots, so you would want to start them in peat pots. So that's one of the reasons that we start them. Also because I can't find black crim tomatoes often, which is one of my more favorites. And you can get heirloom varieties, which can be problematic because one of the reasons that we hybridized away from heirlooms is shippability and making sure we have something that we can count on. In other words, it's not susceptible to as many diseases and pathogens. But heirloom can taste a lot better. I brought some of the catalogs that I use, well, that I get at home. Territorial Seeds is one. Kara, am I in the right place?
Yeah.
Up, down, right, left.
Oh, you're good.
Okay, Territorial Seeds, a good one. Then Select Seeds, for those of you who like to grow unusual things. They have really some very unusual and lovely plants. I mean, they have at least one full page of amaranthus, which is difficult to find. Then we've got Park Seeds, which is one that most people know about. John Sheeper, which is the retail end of Van Engelen up in Bantam, Connecticut. Pine Tree is organic and a lot of veggies. Okay, and then we have the Natural Garden Company, which does both organic and non-organic. Some of them are not, well, most of the catalogs I get don't do GMOs. So, and GMOs, of course, are in many cases patented. Baker's Seed is great. It has plants, it has veggies, it has flowers.
Great. Hey, Jerry.
Yeah.
Can we put up, just write up a list of that as a follow-up, and maybe we can even post that in the Garden Variety or on the website of all the different catalogs, because people would probably like that.
Yeah.
Also, if people have questions, I do see a few on the chat. So if anyone else has chats or questions, please put it in the chat. And so Jerry, can I ask you the questions we have so far? Is this a good time?
Sure.
Okay. Let's see, we had a question. Is it better to remove the lid when the tips start peeking through the soil, or when the actual seed leaves are opening?
An interesting question, because they're not all going to be at the same point. So I would wait until 50% of the tray had peaked up. And some of those, you know, will be moving toward their seed leaves, because each seed's going to germinate at their own speed. And that was another thing I meant to say. Try, and if you think, I don't want to grow this many tomatoes, this is just way too many, I don't have room. If you're going to put other seeds in the flat, make sure they have the same heat and light requirements, and also the same germination time. Because the minute you start taking things out of this, because they've already germinated, it makes it more difficult for what's left in the tray to stay moist. But yeah, I would take it off as soon as 50% of them were showing above the soil line.
Okay, good, great. Let's see, we had another question. Just if you could review again, what kind of LED lights did you say? And maybe we can provide a list in the Garden Variety of where to, of sources or something. But can you just review what kind of LED lights you mentioned?
Okay, well, first let me start out by saying LEDs are a lot cheaper than they used to be. These lights that we have in here cost $100. Of course, they go for 20,000 to 50,000 hours. And unlike fluorescents, which you have to replace every year because they've lost their illumination capacity to the extent that you need it for germination. I will also put a list of these on an email that I will send out, along with catalog information, website information where I haven't gotten catalogs yet. This size is called a T5. And this is what I'm replacing all of my fluorescents with in my small bulb lights. There's also a T8, and I'm going to call True Value today and see if we can get a case or two of them, depending on how many people would want them. And I will send a questionnaire asking people if they want them once I've gotten the answer from True Value. And the T8s go into a regular light fixture. You can go and buy yourself 2 shop lights, and you can put them on the top of the box in the same way, because they're not too hot. they stay nice and cool. And they also give more light. When you get further into growing inside, you'll become aware of lights that have different wavelengths and which are better for bloom, which are better for foliage. But right now I'm looking for, I saw a red and an orange one on, the place is in Southampton, New England Hydro, but they don't ship the bulbs. And by having a red and an orange, there's no green in there, and that makes it more difficult for insects to reproduce, which is just something I found out in the last year.
Interesting. Okay, great.
Okay.
Let's see. The next question is, when reusing pots, can you discuss if and when, and best practices for reusing pots or trays, I guess?
Well, they need to be sterilized. And my favorite sterilization method is to soak them in a sink with white vinegar. About a cup of white vinegar in a sink full of water. The vinegar, actually being an acid, is an extremely good antifungal. It's what I use at home if I get black mold, that or hydrogen peroxide, which if you do see mold on your plants, you can spray with 50% hydrogen peroxide, 50% water, and it's very good at killing the mold and the mold spores. But yeah, you're going to have to soak them at least half an hour. You know, it's not the dirt on the pot, it's the germs, bacteria, and pathogens on the pot, and that's what the vinegar will target. I don't know if it'll take any of the patina off the pot if you're using an old clay pot, but yeah, that's what I basically use.
Okay, great. All right, let's see. The next question we have is, can you use egg crates as pots?
Egg crates as pots means that you will have to repot them quickly because the egg crates deteriorate. I've tried it, and they deteriorate, and you're going to have to put them into the next size pot soon. But by putting it in with the whole piece of the egg crate, you've got kind of a barrier that protects the plant from overwatering for a little bit, because you have all that soil that's around the egg cup, and you have, it holds too much water and can cause damping off and other issues. So when you're doing that, you have to be careful with watering.
Okay. All right. Can you, you mentioned damping off a couple times. What exactly does that mean?
Oh, the way I was reading up this morning to remember I was going to cover everything. And one thing that struck me, damping off is like you had a little ant in there with an axe going through and chopping all your plants off at the base. And it's a fungal disease. And it has been said that you can use chamomile tea, that it does prevent it from getting too bad, but that's also what you're putting the sand on for. And you want to make sure you don't water too often, but once damping off starts, you have to take the whole tray, toss it, and re-sterilize and start over.
Okay.
It's something everybody gets.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Next question. Do you have recommendations for seed starting potting soil?
Not really. I mean, the one we get at the greenhouse, we get through our supplier, which is Griffin Greenhouse. Essentially, what the seed starting soil should be is sterile and hold together enough to support the plant. That's all it's doing. It's supporting the seed as it grows, and then supporting the stem and the roots. It's not giving it any nutrients or anything else. It's just a support mechanism. I try to stay away from things that are not recyclable. You can get seed starting, the little pods, but some of those are made with Oasis. And while they may have a very high success rate, they don't degrade. I know the Oasis company, which does the floral foam for design, is working on that. But at this point, it would just be seed starter. Anything that says seed starter, you could go up to Agway in Bethel, and they may have their seed starter out already for you to use. Or you can use regular soil. The only thing you have to watch out for then is how moist that soil stays, because it's designed to retain moisture more than a seed starting mix. A
Okay.
seed starting mix is going to be very quick. It's a very fast soil. It's going to drain, so it's not going to hold the moisture and to rot things, just enough for the seed to absorb it, swell, and pop up.
Oh, good. Okay, interesting. All right, let's see. If anybody has more questions, please put them in the chat. But the last question we have is, where do you find the chart for the last frost dates? You mentioned it at the beginning.
You could probably find it at the Ag Center website, the, what is it, CAES, Connecticut Agricultural Extension Station. CAES, either .org or .edu. I'm not sure where I got this one, but it's for all of Connecticut, but I've had it for quite a long time. And as a matter of fact, it also has something that's interesting, because it has the fall date of first frost on this one, which tells you when to pull things out. You know, with the dahlias, you wait until 2 frosts, because that's signaling to the tubers that it's time to go dormant. You don't want to take things like that out before they become dormant. But if you have tomatoes out there and stuff, I mean, you're going to keep your eye on the weather anyway, because that's what's going to do the tomatoes in, is the frost.
Right.
And then it has the number of frost-free days in a year, but I don't think we need that. So
Okay.
it's really essential just to figure out your last frost-free day.
Okay, great. Any other questions? I don't see any more in the chat. Well, actually, no. Let's see. Janer mentioned you can get seed starter at any big box store. The use of seed starter really hampers damping off. Okay, good. And one more question. Would you put the soil in a pot and top it with seed starter? Once roots start, they will find the soil.
I would not do that, because there might, depending on how long the bag's been open, there might be pathogens in the regular soil. The soil that we're going to be handing out is going to come fresh out of the bale. It's not going to have been opened. It's not going to have any holes in it. It's not going to be in a big box store's storeroom over the winter. So a seed starting mix is actually going to be safer and more sterile.
All right, one more question. If the seed packet shows outdoor sown April through May, when do you start the seed indoors?
It says outdoor sowing, and it doesn't list any indoor information. You have to sow it outdoors. I have a whole packet, a whole box this size of seeds that I'm going to be putting out if we get a nice warm day, because things like larkspur, Shirley poppies, California poppies, the annual poppies, none of those are going to be happy being started inside and being put outside. So if it doesn't give you information on how to start it inside, then you can go on the internet and see if there's some instructions, but the seed packet is trying to tell you the most successful way to propagate that plant.
Okay, great. Well, that's a good question then. All right, well, thank you so much. I think this was fantastic. Thank you for doing it, and we are recording it, so we'll be able to post it, and we can send out some follow-ups. So
okay, well,
thanks, Jerry.
One more thing. If anybody wants to move on to a more advanced level seed starting, you know, I'm willing to do that as well, because when you get into perennials, there are a lot of different things that you can do, and a lot of really amazing. You can grow your own cactus, you can grow your own cyclamen. I mean, it's really amazing. I actually got some seeds from a website, and I'm ready to strangle myself, because on the website they had the botanical name, but when the seed packets came, they didn't, and I'm trying to figure out what's what. But I actually got lotus seeds, dwarf lotus seeds, so I'm interested to see how those start. And most people would be afraid of canna seeds, but the thing about the canna seeds is, wow, they give you such a sense of accomplishment, because they're pretty easy to start, and you just have to do a couple of special things. They're not an annual, they're a perennial, so they're not geared. They're not geared to start as easily. You know, when it comes to wildflowers, you'll have something like bloodroot, which has something called an eliazone, which is a germination retardant, because it doesn't, a perennial has to be much more careful than an annual. It doesn't produce as many seeds. And
Great.
but the outside protects it from germinating too soon. It needs to have rain, snow, blah, 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 unless the ants take it. The ants eat the eliazome off, and then you get the bloodroot popping through your walls. And you can watch. You'll see the serpentine path go along your garden, and you'll see it's where the ants have planted it. And it's the same with the jack in the pulpit. We figured out, because it's an irritant that surrounds the seed, if you put it in a nylon stocking or a pair of pantyhose, hang it in the back of your toilet, and each time you flush, those seeds are going to get washed, and you don't have to deal with the irritant. You just get the seeds out to plant. But then, there are a lot of other factors that go into sorting seeds that normally grow outside that are.
All right, that sounds great. So we probably should set up another more advanced workshop. Sounds fantastic. Just wanted to go through, we've got a lot of wonderful, thank you, Jerry, sign me up, and fantastic. So thank you very much for doing this. That's awesome. So thanks, Jerry.
Thank you, Jerry.
Yeah, thank you.
Great. A lot of notes.